Hi, this is Mark at learnhowtogarden.com, and in today's episode of the 10-Minute Gardener we're going to do a quick update on our tomatoes. We planted our tomatoes out about a month ago. We planted some into grow bags, we planted some into the soil in the polytunnel, and as you can see they're quite healthy, they're growing quite well. If we can focus down here, we've started to get our tomatoes, they're already growing. On this one we left one of those little side shoots we talked about pricking out 2 weeks ago, and as you can see, if you focus on this very quickly, you get this enormous growth, and we don't want that at all. That's literally been left just to show you how quick it will grow in a fortnight. So we're just going to take that off, we're going to bend it backwards and forwards and take it off. So this just shows you how much energy you're losing from your plants if you don't get those side shoots off early. So it's really important, as we said in our last update, you get them off early. The other thing we're going to be doing today is giving these their first spray. Now, I spray all my tomatoes with two things, and I spray them basically in about a 7-day rotation. I spray them with a seaweed fertilizer, which I literally apply as a foliar feed, and I also spray them with milk. So I'll just show you how I mix up the milk and the reasons why we do it. Here we have a little hand sprayer that's half full of water and just some everyday milk, and we're going to add about 1/3 to this. Now this is something I've done all my life. It's something both my grandfathers used to do for their tomatoes, and what it does is, one, it gives a calcium feed, a foliar calcium feed to your plants, and that's one of the biggest reasons that your tomatoes get something called blossom end rot, when the end of them goes brown and sort of starts to rot and they're not very usable, and it counteracts that. And what's really interesting, in the last couple of years there's a lot of research being done in Holland on using tomatoes as using milk as a spray on tomatoes. Milk produces something called bivuric acid, and bivuric acid at about 2% has a really positive effect on slowing down mildews and early tomato blight. So it's one of those things that people have done for a long time, and they're now using modern science to sort of find out why it works. So we've got about 1/3 milk to 2/3 water, and very simply we're just going to very lightly spray all our tomatoes. Just like our watering, we want to be doing this early in the morning. We don't want to be spraying late in the evening. The earlier you can water your tomatoes, the earlier you can do your spraying, the better. So they have all day to dry, so that if you like, they go to bed at night with their leaves bone dry. You don't want moisture on the leaves and the foliage of your tomato plants. So we do this early in the day, we give it all day to be absorbed, and then the next feed that we'll give them, or the next spray, will be a foliar feed in about 7 days. For those eagle-eyed among you, you'll see there are some basil plants interspersed among the tomatoes. If you go to one of our herb blogs, I'll explain why the basil is with the tomatoes and why it's actually growing in the same soil as opposed to where most of the herbs are. So the only other thing I want to show you is the comparison between these that are in the ground and the ones we've got in our grow bags. So we'll just pop over to the grow bags and I'll show you those. Our tomatoes here are exactly the same variety. This is Green Zebra. This is one of the ones I believe has some of the best taste, one of the real old-fashioned tasting tomatoes. Planted at exactly the same time. These are growing in grow pots, in grow bags. They're still looking quite healthy. They still are setting tomatoes. They've still got quite a lot of flower coming on, but they don't seem quite as lush. The actual colour isn't quite as dark, and they don't seem quite as strong. And I would surmise from that the ones that are growing in the soil have access to much more trace elements. They're getting all the little bits and bobs that sort of just help them to grow really well. So what we'll be doing here in the next day, we'll probably be spraying these with a very weak seaweed fertilizer. We'll probably take basically a cup of seaweed for about a watering can. Would be a good one. It's about a cup of seaweed fertilizer for 2 litres of water, and we'll be giving them a foliar feed just to sort of perk them up slightly. I'm still quite happy with them, you know. Don't worry if you get a tiny bit of curling on the leaf like this, that's quite normal. It gets quite hot in the polytunnel, and that's quite normal on tomatoes. Remember that you're better to keep them slightly on the dry side than really, really wet. They don't like being soaked. It's a common mistake with tomatoes. And I don't know whether we can focus down here. I did notice one of these got a small, so we're still sort of setting tomatoes on these just like the ones growing in the ground. So we'll keep monitoring these. We'll probably have another look in a couple of weeks. As I say, be really vigilant for signs of blight. Blight is the sort of real problem with tomatoes. If it's early blight, then as long as you pick the leaves off, get them out of your polytunnel or greenhouse, your tomatoes should be fine. You don't have to do anything. If it's late blight, you could spray with a copper spray. If you're organic, you won't want to do that, but really once you've got it, it's too late. If you're going to start spraying with a copper spray to prevent blight, you need to do that now. Bordeaux mixture used to be the classic one. I'm not sure whether that's still available over the world. Certainly it's not available commercially in England, but you can still get it from one or two garden centres. So if you want to go that way, start to spray now and spray at fortnightly intervals with Bordeaux mixture. It's not something I do, but if that's what you want to do, that will give you some protection, but it won't stop it. And remember that potatoes and tomatoes, they're the same family, and it's actually the potato blight that gets on your tomatoes and kills them. I hope you found that interesting, and until the next update on tomatoes, that's Mark from the 10-Minute Gardener saying thanks a lot. If you like what we're doing, if you'd like to subscribe to learnhowtogarden.com, there's a link below this video. It doesn't cost you anything except your email address, and I think you'll find it quite interesting.